Hello, everyone. Welcome to our live panel. We'll be starting soon. Welcome, everyone. My name is Chloe, and I'll be your moderator for today. Thank you for joining us. This panel is a part of our Industry 4 webinar series, and today we have a live panel of industry experts to gain a fresh perspective on the accelerated digital transformation. This live panel is brought to you by Plataine. Plataine offers industrial IoT and AI-based optimization solutions for advanced manufacturing. Today, we will discuss tips and real-life use cases of how to transform your factory into a smart and automated one and address market challenges during COVID-19 and beyond. Avner Ben-Bassat, CEO at Plataine, leads Plataine's product vision and global business strategy, and has been invited to speak at over 40 major industrial conferences globally in the past 5 years. He holds an MBA with distinction from Duke University and a BSc in mathematics and computer sciences from Tel Aviv University. Now, just a few guidelines before we get started. We recommend turning your Zoom ratio to 100% for the clearest resolution. If you have any questions during the panel, please type them into your Q&A box in your Zoom control panel at the bottom of the screen. Your questions will be answered by the panelists at the end. Now, without further ado, Avner, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Chloe. Good morning to those of you in the United States, good afternoon in Europe, and good evening with those of you joining from East Asia. It's great to have you all here, and thanks for joining. We're going to talk today about Industry 4.0, smart manufacturing, and there's a great team of speakers here to join us. Professor Rab Scott from the Advanced Manufacturing Research Center, Head of Digital, Paul Perera, formerly at GKN, now from Vassal Enterprises, and last but not least, Malte Scherner from South Africa, Executive Manager of Programs at AAT Composites. What we'd like to cover today is a lot of the practicalities of Industry 4.0 and smart manufacturing. We're going to go through some topics that we found interesting to the wider audience and get this collective feedback. I think you'll find some great and very different perspectives, which will lead us to a very interesting discussion. As Chloe mentioned, we're very much interested in your questions. So if anything comes up, use the Q&A box. We'll collect the questions, and towards the end, we'll open it for a wider discussion. So again, thanks, Chloe, for the introduction. Thanks, everyone, for joining. And of course, thank you to our speakers. What I'd like to do first is a quick round of introductions. Let's hear from our speakers about their background and certainly their initial thoughts on this topic. Rab, if you could take the lead, please. Thank you.
Avner, many thanks. Thank you for that kind introduction and the opportunity to speak today. My name's Rab Scott. I'm Head of Digital at the University of Sheffield's Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, which is also part of the High Value Manufacturing Catapult. We're actually part of the research ecosystem, which is supporting UK manufacturing across all advanced and high-value manufacturing sectors in the UK. So the Industry 4 challenge is really one that is very close to our heart. We are here to help companies de-risk their first engagement with these new technologies. And it's very much about not just de-risking, but adopting, helping them adopt those technologies that were going to be best for them. So we're learning from a number of different sectors. We work in the medical sector, the automotive sector, the aerospace sector, construction sector, because quite often translational activities are the easiest to do. Translational research where someone's already done the heavy lifting, someone's done the learning, and we can move it into another sector. And really, Industry 4 for me, is it new? Is it a revolution? We've been doing this sort of connecting and data extraction from machine tools and getting insights for a long time now. But what we can do these days, what has changed is the cost of it, the speed of it, the functionality of it, the capability of this. So really for me, Industry 4 is the start of a new era in manufacturing. Back to you, Avner.
Thanks, Rab, and we'll definitely talk about that, how we can use all of this in order to go for a higher level of manufacturing. Greatly appreciated. Paul, would you like to go next, please?
Well, thank you again, Avner, for the invitation. And yeah, Rab is very modest in his background. He's actually one of the formative thinkers around Industry 4. And last year we had the pleasure of working together to turn an aerospace and automotive supply chain into probably the biggest experiment of Industry 4 with the creation of a ventilator program for the UK. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about what the purpose of Industry 4 is and why it's relevant more now than ever. We've had this crisis, it's all about resilience. It's all about this supply chain connectivity. It's all about how do we bring the best of the best of the things that are in our kit bag and actually have an impact. And I think what Rab has been able to do with me and a few others out of other sectors is really change the mindset. And I think one of the things that we will learn from today's experience is how to go about doing that. So I hope that's of relevance for today's audience, and look forward to discussing that further with Malte and yourselves.
Super, Paul. Thank you. Malte?
Yes, good day, everyone. My name is Malte Scherner. I'm the Executive Manager for Programs here at AAT Composites. Yeah, as the name already states, Composites, I've been spending my whole career designing, developing composite parts for the aviation industry. And I had the opportunity 5 years ago to actually emigrate to South Africa from Germany, where I was originally based, to South Africa and take up the challenge to manufacture composite parts for the aviation industry from the tip of South Africa. So that has got challenges in itself. Just if you look at supply chain and those topics, getting material here, value adding, and then sending it back to our customers who are mainly located in America or Europe, Asia, so really far away from Africa. There's not one single customer really on our continent. So Industry 4.0 is such a wide topic that I always like to really try to get it into a perspective in the sense of where it originated. And it originated in 2011, more or less. Fraunhofer Institute, Raab, is very well aware of it. So a German thought behind it with a German problem statement also behind it. So Germany being high manufacturing costs, being about really a well-developed country, and how do you stay competitive in such an environment? So from a South African perspective, I'm convinced, we at AAT are convinced you can't just copy paste what sort of Fraunhofer and other clever institutes and people are doing. You really have to adopt and then try to understand what is really the deeper thoughts behind Industry 4.0 and adapt it to your region or even to your company. So really have a very focused mindset, a very focused understanding of what are your challenges in the whole top context, and how can you use Industry 4.0 mindsets in order to really improve your own competitiveness.
Okay, super, Malte, thank you. Actually, in a way, this is a great segue to the first topic we wanted to cover, because we do see here and everywhere different perspectives on what Industry 4.0 can do or is to begin with. But what I'd really like to do here is maybe take the next step. What does it mean? So if I could ask each of you, and Paul, you can go first, what kind of improvements can one expect, or have you seen or deployed from, let's call it, Industry 4.0 technology?
So I think what I've seen and experienced and currently doing, you probably hear something whirring in the background, it's the 3D printer. We have an ability with Industry 4 to create distributed manufacturing at a scale that we've never seen before. I think, my example here is that I'm producing custom fit masks for the NHS, the hospitals of the UK, where people can't fit the mask that they're given. We take a scan of their face and print a mold that fits around their face and send it off in 2 days' time. So they've got something that they can go back to work with. But the idea of having a distributed manufacturing capability on a digital thread that allows people to verify that that's going to fit before they even get the physical thing in their hands through a digital twin, and being able to be confident and secure in the product achieving its aim and having qualification that that part really does meet the grade. And therefore you get this circular value of the digital thread. The more you use the digital means, the better the solution becomes. Every time you use it, you get feedback, you can learn from that, you can then improve on it. And so that cycle becomes even faster with the use of Industry 4. And so I see the opportunity of Industry 4 is just being really, really nimble, resilient, and able to do distributed manufacturing in a way never thought of. Obviously, all of that will reduce costs and improve productivity.
Thanks, Paul. Rab, what have you seen? I know you have a very, very diverse perspective, touching many segments of many industries.
We do, but Industry 4 comes down to some fundamental statements. It's about transitioning into being a data-driven organization. And by being a data-driven organization, being able to make better decisions faster. But to do this, we need all the things that Paul was talking about. We need that level of connectivity. We need the resilience, but we also need to change our mindset. An agile or digital mindset is quite different to the traditional manufacturing mindset. And Industry 4 isn't a technology, it's a fusion of technologies. It's about sensors, it's about the movement of data, it's about the agile insights that you can get from that data. But then it's about understanding what those insights, when they're layered on perhaps historical data, what they can tell you about the future. But it's also changing the mindset in manufacturing to be willing to fail fast. Because if you're failing digitally, if you're failing virtually, then you can learn and move on. So actually, we shouldn't call it failure. We should call it experimentation. And it's about experimenting with the art of the possible with digital so that we can become more productive, and in becoming more productive, in becoming more sustainable. Because if we reduce waste, if we improve productivity, then our impact on the planet is going to be lower.
Fantastic, and amen to that. I'd like the way you tied in, the eventual business goal, right? We're not doing it for the sake of technology. We're doing it to run a better operation. So Malte, I know you're deep into operations. What are you seeing from your perspective?
Competitiveness, the very short answer. So just going or sharing some more insights of what we actually do and what is driving us. So we are very labor driven. That is the advantage we're also utilizing in South Africa, being a first world / third world country. That's our business case advantage, having cheaper labor available, having a infrastructure available, which is not first world country comparable, but getting there. So there's a lot of advantages manufacturing in South Africa. But the main disadvantage is for sure the logistics, is really getting the material into the country and getting the product out of the country. That is where we need a lot of information across a lot of partners from a supply chain. So it's really understanding your own business, having the transparency in your own business and your own material demands going forward. Buying the right quantities at the right time, considering what is happening on the logistics side when it comes to ships sailing towards Cape Town or flights flying towards Johannesburg or Cape Town. The more information you have, the more real-time data you have, the better you are able to coordinate those supply chains. So that's the one really big topic driving us. And what Raab also already said, when it comes to reducing waste, you can really translate one to one into US dollars or whatever currency you want to take. That's an approach we've also taken with Plataine, with the fabric optimizer. So we cut a lot of textile material, the pre-preg material. We need to control the shelf life. Now there is a limited material life available to us. A lot of that is already eaten up with the logistics. Then you really have to use optimized quantities at the right time and the right size, with potentially really having no waste of material whatsoever when you cut your textiles. Using really a lot of data there again is the big advantage. And another really exciting topic here on AAT2 side, we've teamed up with one of our local universities, a software package which allows us with the camera systems to really look at workflow of manual operations and the layup of a composite part. Basically really just to verify the workflow, to see the workflow really on your screen, connected to a routing card, to a manufacturing routing card, having immediate responses if something is going not according to plan. You are really so super quick, just having real-time data available, adjusting your production plan immediately. Something which we are really excited about and which yeah, shows already really good results in our manufacturing plant. So it's all about staying competitive or getting more competitive.
Okay, no, fantastic, Malte, and thanks for the gracious comment. So this is perfect timing. First of all, I'd like us now to start digging in deeper, talk about the details, perhaps the challenges and the lessons learned. But just before we go there, I want to stir it up a bit here and also get some audience engagement. So Chloe and Vicky, if you can help us with a quick poll, perhaps let's call it a comic relief. But with COVID dawning upon us all, I'd like also to fantasize about the future. So think about this, everyone here for a second. You know, we could all use a vacation, but where would you like to go? Pick any one of those. Let's see some collective thinking here, and we'll resume with our panel. Okay, looks like we have a winner here. Beach or countryside it is. Looks like cities are out of fashion, but hopefully they'll come back soon again. So thanks everyone for this input. I hope this also gets your deeper involvement. Really looking forward to your questions later on. So back on topic. We talked about the connection of deploying the technology for the sake of business benefits. And I think the bigger question is, okay, now that we are about to do it, what are the challenges that we're seeing? A few years ago, this was a lot of theory. Oh, we got to do Industry 4.0. But since then, a lot of us have been doing it. So I'd really like to share here any challenges, lessons learned, any best practices that you could share. Perhaps Paul, if you'd like to go first.
Rab and I will do this together. I think, we set off about this time last year to basically take technology that we knew that could work. And we realized that in the middle of the ventilator challenge, one of the things that we needed to do was rapidly train, develop people to be able to assemble ventilators. So I picked up the phone with Rab, and I think a little US company called Microsoft came to our rescue and gave us about the biggest lot of HoloLens 2s and HoloLens 1s that we could probably get our hands on and could get in the back of Rab's van. And we ended up deploying these into effectively 7 different operations. And what we saw was anything from an automotive company like Ford to GKN, where I was, Rolls-Royce or Airbus, people deployed and had different experiences depending on where they were starting from in their digital maturity. So even on the sites that I had access to, there were 2 different digital maturities. And we saw some people just completely not sure how to deal with this, and they took it, only so far. Others embraced it completely. So one thing that's trying to get across here is there is a mindset and there's a digital maturity that we need to think about. And we need to think about the tools and the people at the same time. So one lesson learned to take away from that, do both. Don't do one without the other, but also keep some sort of sync. I don't know if Rab wants to add to that, but I think it's quite important.
One of my colleagues has great one for little aphorisms, and one of his latest ones is the best time to plant a tree is 100 years ago. The second best time is now. And it's the same with your digital journey. If you haven't started it, now's the right time to start it. but you can go and see things and touch things and learn from your peers. But really what we found with the ventilator challenge was the systems are out there, but the challenges are making the systems to talk to each other. Interoperability of systems it's a legacy problem. So really what we've got to be looking at is what is the next generation of connected factory going to look like? And that's some of the work that we've been doing at the AMRC. We've developed a program called Factory Plus, which is about next generation shop floor connectivity. But then we're looking at deploying an enterprise architecture so that it's using a sort of enterprise bus with different microservices hanging off this. So you're removing dependencies. We go into many manufacturers these days, and they've still got the same systems that they had for the last 10 years because they know if they change one part, then they're going to have to change everything connected to that one part. And if they change those other parts, they're going to have to change those. So it's really created a cat's hairball, if you like, of IT systems. And it's what we've got to look at. You've got to look at the future state of the factory, but you've also got to understand where you're starting from. Coming back to Paul's point of what digital maturity level are you at the moment and where do you want to get to? But that's got to extend from the shop floor to the top floor, because you've got to educate not only the workers that are going to be touching it on an everyday basis, but also those C-suite people that are going to have to advocate it and sign the checks in the end.
Fair enough. So I guess, Rab and Paul, you're talking about the digital maturity of the enterprise, but also there seems to be a maturity of mindset, transformation of mindset.
Very much so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can add
So
to
Malte,
that.
I'll turn it. Oh, please, Paul. Yes.
No, I didn't. Just the thought that sprung in my mind, and Rab and I didn't talk as much as we did in those days, but the thing that's missing, in my opinion, and I used to work in big factories producing aerospace components, is that ability to try things out, because aerospace was very risk averse, right? So, to do something kind of was always going to be challenging. The benefit of things like the catapult centers and research establishments that do this transition is they give a safe place to do some of this work. And so what we actually learned, in addition to what I think Rab's already touched on, is that we are able to do some of these things, take it away from a frame of reference that we've always known and loved, and move it 10 years. And in fact, I think if we look at it, the last year has probably moved us 5 years towards that 10-year goal. But the danger is we spring back to what we've been used to, because we go back to producing aerospace components and we don't take it forward. And so one of the things I've been trying to advocate really is, let's let that go backwards. That's why I'm kind of pushing out the fringes here and saying, we learned something on the ventilators. Now, what do we do with that? So what we're doing now is we've built a digital architecture that Rab's talking about, but it's no good having it just inside the factory. It has to extend through your supply chain. And you also need, and this is one of the things we're playing with very hard actually with the masks, we want to actually create a open framework for supply chain connectivity, such that discrete event modeling, effectively that simulation that Malte talked about different scenarios, different resilience models that you might need in the future. You never know when the next order is coming. You never know how big it's going to be. But you need that supply chain to be really connected in a different way. And with digital, that's entirely possible. So I think there's another benefit if we can take some of these ideas forward, to actually reestablish what it means to be in a digital supply chain.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Actually, in a few minutes, we'll start talking about COVID impact, and we can circle back to that. So Malte, allow me to merge two questions for you, if you can answer them together. First of all, where do you see the low-hanging fruit? What's the opportunity from your perspective? And perhaps tied to that, or the other side of the coin, the challenges that you've seen, similar to what Paul and Rab had just commented on.
Yeah, I'll gladly do so. Low-hanging fruit is always my favorite topic. Having successes to also celebrate along the line motivates the team. Starting off, Industry 4.0 is such a big topic. In South Africa, you say if you want to eat the elephant, you have to do it bite by bite, right? So really don't try to do everything immediately and have the whole big picture in front of you. You will just lose focus. So you need to understand your own demands, your own requirements, your own needs. Where are your challenges? Where are your bottlenecks? All those things. Their data is already a prerequisite. And the big challenge for us here at AAT is also data integrity, like Paul and Rob already mentioned. So there's a lot of data available. Is it the right data? Is the data quality good enough? Those are things which can really mess up your whole strategy. And you have to go back one step and just focus on your data integrity in order to achieve something going forward. That's one of the low-hanging fruits actually for us. So it's just really understanding the data, interpreting the data, cleaning up data, celebrate the success once you get it, one bite of the elephant able to be digested, hooray. And then if we really look at our business model, which has got that high labor component, that's really the understanding in the workflows, where are the critical topics currently, where are the workflows being stopped and for what reason. Now, it might be as simple as there is an insert missing, which is still in stores. Now the part cannot be assembled. It cannot move to the next step. Suddenly you've got 10 guys waiting for the next manufacturing step just because of that one insert. No, and you don't want to send somebody to the stores to collect the one insert. No, there need to be quicker means, and that is what we are basically doing with that software approach on the software package I was talking about, optimizing the workflow. We use data in order to highlight these topics immediately, and we just really see we've got 30–40% workflow improvements, where before we were standing still, we had line stops. Now we have a lot less line stops just by having the information readily available on a tablet right next to the line. That's the lower hanging fruit. So really just focus on the small things and optimize and be more competitive.
Okay, so allow me a quick follow-up question here. You said celebrate the success. So I sense here there's a question of buy-in from the executives and the team. Is this where you're going?
Yes, no, for sure. But even not only have the executive management also be part of it, I think that's really a prerequisite. It needs to be in the end really driven shop floor upwards. So you need to have for sure a certain strategic drive coming from management downwards. But in the end, the success and the achievements are made on the shop floor, by the real people building the parts, and they need to really drive it. And we see when you give them the right tools and the data integrity is there, suddenly there's a complete mind shift in the importance of the data quality. Whereas before, my manager wants me to fill in an Excel spreadsheet and I just do it and never mind the content and I hand it over. And that's kind of the old days. Suddenly there is the understanding of the value good quality data is actually driving the business, and that is what is motivating end of the day. And then it's easy for executive management to kind of also just buy the cake end of the day.
Okay, fair enough. Perhaps Paul, you'd like to comment on that too. Prior history with very big company, now more of a startup atmosphere. So how do we get that buy-in from the wider team, up and down?
I can be very open. I think it starts with some middle ground managers possibly breaking away and doing something, improving it, because often the seniors just don't have the ability to talk the talk. When it comes to digital, I think we find it's probably some of that younger blood in a company that changes the mindset, and you need to give the guys and girls an opportunity. So I had a little team who approached me and they said, look, we want to go ahead and make an IoT device that effectively will improve the inventory and the yield and performance of a particular landing gear light attachment to an aircraft. And they said to me, what we just need from you is £2,000. We want to go and buy some Arduino little microprocessors. We want to buy some sensors and just let us play. And I said, done. The next thing is they come back to me and they show me a showcase of all of the options they considered, and then nailed a proof of concept that I could actually see working in the factory within 6 weeks, a little sprint that went through that process, cost me next to nothing. It convinced people above me that this was not just some silly game. This was going to have some real financial impact. And we could actually save, we thought, nearly 12 weeks lead time on a particular component that we were having to ship backwards and forwards to South Korea and so on. So with that became the first little crumb. And, you know, I like the eat the elephant in small size, you know, and the analogy with food. I think we need to lay down some crumbs along the way so that the leaders can get there. It's not because they haven't got the ability to get there, they just need to have the examples. And one of the things and challenges I find of great engineers and manufacturing people is they don't share their successes particularly. So what we did was start to showcase some of these things. And that's one of the other great things about what the Catapult Center does. These things aren't locked away. They're now open to the world to see. They're really a showcase of big opportunities. So to convince people, then you can take people to these Catapult Centers like Rab worked in, and you can bring them to see everything across sector as well, and begin to say, oh, it's not just me, it's other sectors having the same problem, but here's a solution. And I think it is a lot about the engagement. But the other point I think Malte makes is there's a lot more data and there's a lot more potential for measurement, inspection technologies, and integrating that to big data. So we need to find ways to convince people that the digital data is as good as what we get from someone with verniers. You know, we clearly know it is, but we just need to convince people that changing from one method of measurement to another is going to work and build confidence into the process. So I think this is about small steps, but doing it quickly. And Rab's probably going to talk about how we can do that.
Oh, perfect, Rab. I'd love to hear your feedback here because, in a way, your organization inspires, right, others to take the path, and then you guide them. So, you know, where do you start with them, and how do you get it done?
So really, where we start is by inspiring them, by showing them relevant demonstrations, relevant platforms that people can relate to. There's always been a problem. If I show an automotive sector person something from the aerospace sector, they don't automatically get it. But we don't have to do that in the Catapult Centers. We can simplify things onto things like, we've got a car, we've got a sports car. Everyone knows what a sports car's like. You know, they've all seen James Bond or Top Gear or whatever, so they can relate to that. And then you show them the technologies. And then you start taking them through the process of how you translate it from one sector or one application into something that's more relevant to them. And then we do a proof of concept. And we hold their hand all the way. And it's not just us holding their hand. We have got a membership organization within the AMRC that we can then introduce them to people like Plataine, who can help them implement it in their own facility, because we work in this sort of mid-range activity where technologies are getting matured, but not quite taken to market. That's not our role. Our role is in that research and development area, that translational research area, but we've got to partner with those people that are going to support it through life, because there's no point in us showing someone technology that can't be supported in their facility, because this is all coming back down to what's the business value.
Okay.
And it's really all about, so much of what we do is about taking out non-value added activity. But to do that, as Malte said, you've got to understand where that non-value added activity is. Is it about the guy walking back to the stores for that one insert, that one cutting tool that he should have had anyway, but because his inventory sheet was written out 2 days ago, rather than being real-time data, they're not seeing it. But the systems are there. Right. Let's integrate them.
Oh, fantastic. By the way, our experience is that when you start building up the ROI, and we'll talk about it soon, you know, the fact that this employee went and spent 30 minutes or an hour looking for something, that's just the beginning of the value save. The fact that the line waited for an hour, that's the bigger deal. And we'll get to that. So great. Guys, the next topic I'd like to cover is COVID and how it had impacted all of us, and specifically your work. But before that, I think one thing it did impact is how we all work from home or in hybrid mode, and which leads us to dress code. So again, a bit to give you guys a pause and to stir it up, if I could ask Vicky for the next poll question, and then we'll transition into our next topic. So what's your Zoom dress code, guys and ladies? How do you show up to work, so to speak?
I'll tell you a little secret, Avner. I'm wearing a sports jacket, but I've got shorts on.
Oh, God forbid. God forbid.
Yeah, it could be worse. It could be my mammal outfit. You know, my lycra sometimes gets worn as well.
Okay, looks like we have a nice quorum here. One brave soul wearing a pajama, or at least attesting to it. But it's really been a challenge. You know, it's even personally speaking, hoping for all of us to come back to our offices and to our normal life soon, go on vacation and come back to normal. So thanks everyone for participating. I do encourage you to send in questions. I see some initial ones coming in. Type them in and we'll address them soon. So next topic, guys, COVID. And Malte, perhaps you can share, and of course, the situation is different country by country, business by business. But what impact has COVID had on your operations? And again, from the Smart Factory Industry 4.0 point of view.
A terrible one. We started off with the country actually closing down. That was April last year. Yeah, where really South Africa went into a hard lockdown and we were forced to stop operations overnight. The positive side effect of that for sure was that we also overnight had to implement work from home for the office staff. So typically our R&D department. So the engineers get them offsite, get them working from offsite, make the data available from offsite with all the security issues. Yeah, that was a challenge, which I think we coped really well. So task achieved, but from an operational output, zero. So you have to tell your customers, sorry, you are not even allowed to operate under the existing conditions. Can't get worse than that. That led to a partial reopening of our manufacturing, coinciding with customers telling us, oh, by the way, programs are going to shift to the right. And we are not talking here 6 weeks or 6 months. It's really shifting then to 2021, if we are lucky, 2022, 2023. Yeah, so we really have a sales gap, which wasn't anticipated, which we also have to cover end of the day. And that is also really what left us without other choice than to really also focus on what we need to do to really compensate for those revenue shifts. And we also decided to actually stop all projects which are not immediately needed for securing deliveries. Yeah, so also Industry 4 projects on our side were at least delayed or really harshly reduced in effort, not necessarily being the right thing to do, but the only thing to do now from our perspective in the current situation. So since last year, we've, I think, come a long way. We've had a long summer. We've got very few COVID cases in the country currently. So that's positive. We are operating already for the last few months, 100%. So we're getting back on track also when it comes to improvement projects, which is all great. But we really long for the industry, the aviation industry, to go back to traveling, to people traveling, myself. Travel, I haven't seen my customers now for also over a year, just virtually, not in a pajama. Yeah, and those topics really keep us alive and kicking. A lot of headaches still to solve, but yeah, I think we are all carefully optimistic that also air travel is going to reopen in a few months' time, and then hopefully some normality is going to come back to our lives and also our businesses.
Okay, thank you. And again, looking forward to better days there. Rab, if you can share with us, please, what kind of requests came to you from your community in light of these, let's call it new challenges or amplified challenges, you know, that are now requiring your support and your assistance to resolve and address?
So, Avner, I think that the biggest challenge that we were asked to address is, what's the future going to look like? You know, when we're getting manufacturing back in its feet, and this is probably 6 months ago when we started going back, the ways of working were going to have to change. People were going to have to look at different ways of laying out their facilities, having different flows through it so that you don't get, so you still maintain social distancing, all of this sort of stuff. And we started a series of programs that was really showing people how they can use digital tools to simulate their future state. So discrete event simulation tools, layout tools, and to understand what their productivity would be like. But then also how to address some of those productivity challenges. You know, if I've got to stand 2 meters away from my colleague and we can't pass each other things, how can we get that material transfer? Well, perhaps the introduction of new technologies like cobots. You know, it's looking at how we can actually, and this is what happened, accelerate the adoption of these industrial digital technologies to overcome the challenges of COVID and of social distancing. And really, I think that the impact for us has been that it's speeded up that digital transformation. As Malte said, you know, working from home, we've had a huge challenge, but our digital teams have been able to carry on business as usual, because they do most of their work on laptops or on wearable devices. Whereas our manufacturing people, the ones that needed to get into the shop floor, we had to come up with different solutions, but we were in a place where we could actually test different solutions and then pass those solutions on to the people that we work with. So it's not just theory, it's stuff that we've done.
Okay, thank you. And frankly, also to share from our community, our customer community, you know, past the hard lockdowns, a lot of questions about, Malte, you said competitiveness. Paul, I think you used the word resiliency. So, you know, supply chain disruptions, lockdowns, quarantines, demand up, demand down, you know, as if it's not hard enough to run a factory. Paul, perhaps if you want to touch upon that, what have you seen from your end?
You know, much the same, echoing Malte's point. In the aerospace industry, came March, April, we shut down most of our factories until we found our feet. You know, we were making ventilator components in many of the factories in the UK. In the US, we kept the defense parts of the business going. But as we see the dawning of a new demand, I think, and much smaller numbers of aircraft, potentially of the long-range variants, I think people are setting their sights on what sustainability means. And I think that one of the things that's hit us all is that aerospace is also challenged not just by the pandemic, but by probably a bigger pandemic, if I can call it that, in sustainability. Only yesterday, the UK government's added aviation to the list of areas where carbon reduction needs to happen, and to accelerate that from 2050 to 2035. And so I think we are recognizing in manufacturing ourselves, you know, the use of composites needs to think about how we apply a different way of using materials and processes. We might have to move to a new fuel source. And I think we're hearing a lot from Airbus about hydrogen, but there's people talking about ammonia. You know, we are going to be looking at new materials that can cope with cryogenic temperatures. So we were beginning to realize that actually, if this happens as quickly as it might do, it could really radically shake up our existing production facilities. And therefore, we need to get our head around how do we accelerate using digital, not just get the benefit from productivity. How do we make sure that we can do things that we'd never even thought of with our existing assets? Can we lay down composite bamboo as a new composite for interiors of aircraft? Could we repurpose some of our factories that are doing automation of large-scale gas turbine components? We may not make lots of large-scale gas turbine components in 5 years' time. So what are we going to do with that capacity, that capability, those people? And so it really brought to our attention that if we can do the experimentation that Rab's thinking about, actually we can apply ourselves now to be more credible in delivering a solution for this sustainable aviation. And I think that that's where Industry 4 comes in. Look, being honest, I've spent a lot of my last 3-4 years trying to work out how to get additive manufacturing into a product. You know, the existing products or the regulatory requirements were going to take us years and years and years to really get the benefit. And that's the reality. However, now we see 3 or 4 new potential applications, whether it be eVTOLs, whether it be these new hydrogen aircraft, whether it be where actually the value of some of the new capabilities that come out of Industry 4 can actually be more relevant. So I think that the benefit of coming out of this in a mindset that things are changing means that we'll apply more digital.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Paul and everyone. We're perfect on schedule. The last section of our panel, I'd like to open up for questions from our audience. I can see already the first few coming in. Again, for the sake of guidance, you have a Q&A button on the bottom. Click it and type in the questions. They'll come over to my desk and we can take it from there. As the questions are coming in, we have a first one, and the question was about European competitiveness to the rest of the world. So what are the challenges that need to be solved or could be solved in Europe? More of a regional question. So perhaps Rab or Paul, would you like to take that one?
I'm happy to kick off, and I would say that the biggest challenge is, well, there are 2 huge challenges. One is around legacy systems, and the other is about interoperability. And the 2 are connected. An awful lot of the manufacturing base, at least in the UK, has got equipment that is 20, 30 years old and was never dreamt of being connected. And so it doesn't necessarily have the cyber layer, the cybersecurity layer in place that is required. It doesn't have a standard that is expected to connect to another standard. And these are the sorts of things that are making a lot of money for a lot of people. One of our local software companies, the CEO actually said that interfaces are where people make money, because an interface is always a challenge. How do you get systems talking to each other? We've seen it everywhere. And when they don't talk to each other, it's always the other person's fault. So interoperability of systems, especially when addressing legacy challenges, if you can come up with a solution for that, then the world is your absolute elephant, if you like, and you can start eating now. Okay, thank you. Another angle of this, and perhaps I'll take it to you, Malte. You know, you said earlier, bite, bite, bite. I think everyone is liking your elephant analogy. But when you look at the big picture, you know, how do you know which bite to take first? And how do you tie it into the business objectives you got from the most senior management?
I can only share what I personally focus on, and that is really the constraints which your business imposes on you. So it's nothing you really choose, but just look at your process, at your workflow, understand what is hindering you from being more successful, more efficient, and focus on that. Be sure that you've got measurables to also show that improvement. You know, the KPIs, have them or decide what to have in place already before you even start, just to ensure that you actually really, with all the actions you want to take, have a measure in place which shows you whether you're on the right track or not. And then really just focus on the small things and not on the whole picture. Now, as soon as you've got one constraint out of the way, the next one will pop up automatically anyway. And take it bite by bite.
Okay. Just a thought on the benchmark, Avner, if I could. One of my concerns about Europe is that we are losing a bit of perspective sometimes. You know, we've certainly from a UK perspective with Brexit, we've had a challenge. But when you look at just automation, and you've seen these statistics, that South Korea has something like 631 robots per 10,000 manufacturing engineers. And you look at the UK, we're less than 74. So we're less than 10% of the number of robots available to us in our workforce. You think about then how we apply them. And I think that that's the key. It isn't about the volume, it's how you apply it. So some benchmarks can be completely, I think, distracting. But I think one thing that the UK has done and started to realize is take a bitter pill. In Europe, the UK has probably been the worst in terms of productivity in some areas, and our real relentless focus over the last couple of years has been how do we address that? So a program called Made Smarter has been rolled out in the UK, which Rab and I have been participating on as advisors, trying to draw other companies along this journey to Industry 4, not because they don't get it, it's because they just don't know where to start. And so the question's a really good one. We need to find simple ways to get people moving. We need to build out some use cases. And I think we also need to benchmark ourselves so we don't drink our own bathwater. I think if we do all those three things well and share them, I think we'll get there faster. And I think we've got the people and the appetite to do that now.
Okay, great. We have some questions coming in here on methods, and I'll get back to that in a second. But if I may, one comment, a nice thing we've been seeing a lot is that transition from POC, proof of concept in the technical sense of it, to proof of value. Okay, what is this technology doing for me? And these are the KPIs I guess you've all been speaking about. So, and of course, Paul, tying into your comment, we don't need to look at the macro level benchmarks. We need to look at our own internal benchmarks and see and measure, per Malte's comment, how it all ties in. Rab, the next question, if it's okay, I'll take to you. We're also seeing shifts in management styles. Early on, we discussed the need to get buy-in and change the mindset. So when you talk to management, C-level in many cases, what do you tell them to do? How should they change their approach, their style?
So what we tend to do is we say, don't be afraid to ask questions. There's famous saying, there are no dumb questions, there are only dumb answers. But go and ask questions of the people that are doing the job. Go down and talk to the shop floor, because chances are those people on the shop floor are going to be more closer to being a digital native than the people on the top floor. And this is where we've really got to understand. We've got a generational shift in the UK at the moment. We're just moving out of the baby boomers being in control to we're getting the Generation X's coming through. The people that have actually grown up with digital throughout their life. I have to admit, I'm old enough to remember VHS tapes. I am old enough to remember cassette recorders, things like that. But there's an awful lot of people, that's all they know. And they don't understand the potential that digital could give to them. So who would you go and talk to? Would you go and talk to a management consultant? Well, you've got people in your own organization that understand digital. So do what Paul did. Give them a little bit of free time, a little bit of opportunity to go and solve a problem and show that they can actually do it. And that in itself is quite a management style change for a lot of people. Don't do command and control, do a coordinate and convene management style.
Okay, thank you. So towards the end, if it's okay, gentlemen, if you could each share some closing comments on the various topics we discussed. Take a couple of minutes if there'll be more questions coming in and if we have the time. Malte, if you'd like to comment first.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah, great to share my thoughts. Closing statement from my side is be more curious. That's also answering kind of the management question from just now. So be more curious of what is happening in your own business, what is stopping you from being more successful. Be curious in asking and finding out what is actually out there as possibilities. Work with the innovation centers, work with the universities, work with the young people. Yeah, it comes a lot more naturally to people who don't know what VHS tapes are than to those who do. Yeah, and really just be curious and foster that curiosity and find out what's out there and how can whatever's out there actually help you thrive your business. And then I think
Thanks, Malte.
Industry 4
Please go,
4.0 is almost a natural thing going forward.
Okay, understood. Just I took a comment in our next webinar. We're going to have a poll survey. You know, who of you knows what VHS video is, and then we'll know how to manage the discussion. So I admit my guilt. Malte, thanks a lot. Paul, please, any thoughts here?
I'm going to be very quick, but I think the one C that Rab and Malte haven't touched on is collaborate. For me, the world is not certain in where we're heading, but one thing is for sure, we've got to do it together, and we've got the same common purpose, whether that be, you know, fixing this pandemic issue, whether it be global warming and the climate change, whether it be the next big thing that hits us. It's going to hit the world. And I think Industry 4 becomes part of the solution, not the only solution, but get on and collaborate, find the right partners, experiment, convene, I think is the word that Rab used, but really crack on with it. You know, don't take your time, do it fast, learn, move on, and keep going.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks a lot, Paul. And Rab?
Build your ecosystem, understand who are the actors in it that are the best placed in a particular part of that ecosystem. Don't reinvent the wheel. Also, when we're very young, we go to nursery school and we learn through failure. Our pile of bricks falls over, we build it again. Eventually, we actually get the pile of bricks to stand up. So, you know, learn through experimentation and using digital tools. It doesn't have to cost a lot to experiment, and you're not wasting resources. So embrace failure, don't hide it, and start now if you haven't already started.
Plant the tree 100 years ago. Okay, fair enough. So thanks for that. Indeed, there's a lot of room for collaboration. We see it also from our perspective. No one can solve everything. It's a very wide and rich world. The challenges are high, but so are the opportunities. So I certainly believe in the collaboration, teamwork. Perhaps it's a good time to say that we are partner members of the AMRC, and the partnership environment there is fantastic. So Rab, thank you for that as well. So again, thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you, Malte, Paul, and Rab for your great input and insights. It's incredible, and I'm sure it's very helpful for those who joined. To those on the organization team, Vicky, Chloe here managing the event, thanks again. And thank you and goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thanks, Avner.
Bye-bye.
So to everyone that we didn't manage to answer their questions due to the lack of time, the rest of the questions will be answered offline and we will send to you by email. So following this session, you will receive a recorded version of the panel and further information and resources. And we would love to hear your feedback. So you are welcome to drop us a line, and we invite you to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So I'm going to wrap up. Thank you to all our panelists. Thank you, Avner. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Thanks for joining us today. And we hope to see you next time on our Industry 4 webinar series. So stay tuned for details. Thank you.